Today I'm joined by Daniel Nest, and we're going to do things a bit differently today. Daniel is going to showcase ChatGPT's image generator capabilities. On this podcast, we've been talking a lot about the theoretics of AI. Now we need to go down to business and see how this stuff really works. So, Daniel, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, yeah, my pleasure. I think it should be a fun session, hopefully, for both of us.
For sure. Could you tell our audience a bit about what you're going to demonstrate today?
Yes. So what we've settled on is the a native image generation in ChatGPT, or GPT-4o model is the one that does it. And we thought it would be both fun to do it because it is it's images. People can relate to it. They can immediately see the impact of what's been showcased, but also because it touches upon some of the things I know you and I discussed prior to the podcast, and that's uh, what impact AI might have on, again, jobs that might be outsourced by this, what impact it might have on artists who are potentially not happy with some of their styles being copied by these types of models. How do we get to a place where everybody's kind of benefiting from these technologies, but also nobody's outraged, and how do we reconcile those? So prior to like showcasing the GPT generation itself, I wanted to say why it's a big deal. I mean, apart from the Studio Ghibli images that probably all of us have seen in our feeds for the past, I don't know, two weeks, ever since it came out, it became popular to take a family photo and turn it into a Studio Ghibli image because the model could do it. And that's a fun thing to do, but I think it can do a lot more, and it's kind of a shame to only use it for that. I always joke that a lot of technology that we have now and a lot of AI, the way we use it is like having a time machine, but then using it to, go back 15 minutes so you could sleep a little longer, right? It's like, what are you doing? You can do much more with that. Um, so I wanted to showcase some of the more practical applications, and I'm sure I'm not even scratching the surface of what can be done with it. And the reason it's a big paradigm shift is that it actually understands the context of what the image it makes. All the models we've had up until now, the diffusion models, the ones that you could just tell to do stuff and they would try to make it, they didn't quite understand the context of it. So and they were not good at, for example, negative instructions. You would say, show me an elephant without a head, and it would be like, elephant, head. Here's an elephant with a head. You're like, no, I said without. While GPT-4o native image generation actually exists within the same model that understands the context of the chat you're having. So the text model and the image model, they're kind of married. They're part one and the same. And I'll show you why it's a big deal in practical terms. So I believe I should be able to share my screen to do that. So tell me when you see my screen.
I see your screen.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do to start with is just for fun. I'll take a screen grab of you and I here chatting. And I'm going to go to my showcase, and I'm going to start a new chat. I'm going to just simply copy paste, as you can see, this screenshot. I'll say, create a catchy YouTube thumbnail for a podcast called Futuristic Lawyer. Oops. Based on this image. That's all I'm going to give it. I have no idea what's going to come out on the other side, but let it run. It's going to take a while. And that's why I had a few prepared use cases to showcase. So the most obvious one, and the one that people played the most with, is a style transfer. That is, you upload an image. So in this case, I took this image from Pixabay. It's a free stock image. And I went to my model, which existed in ChatGPT, and I said, draw this as a 1990s video game pixel art horizontal image. And it came up with this. And you can see it sticks really closely to the positioning and the composition of the scene because it has the context visually to understand and process it visually, and to also marry that with my text request. And then I just tried a couple of things just to showcase the variation here. Now, as an abstract painting, I would argue this is not particularly abstract, but that is also because it is now iterating on this image, which is kind of the fun part. You can see this image is a representation of this one, and this one builds on that. So it keeps the Christmas tree and so on. And depending on what you want, you would want to start a new chat if you want to get to your original image and do something with that, or you do this iterative version. Then I said, give me a simple minimalist line art. And we have this, just a representation of the above image, but as a line art. Now claymation, now it does this. And now as if it's made out of Lego, right? So, and at all iterations, it kind of takes the preceding image and applies the extra step to it while keeping the context and the visuals fixed. So this alone is kind of cool and impressive and a cool parlor trick. But this is kind of what many of the diffusion models could sort of do. You had, in Midjourney, you have these style transfers. You can say, do this, but in the style of that. So to me, it wasn't like, this is not the big deal. Where things get a bit more interesting is its ability to synthesize stuff on the fly. So instead of having this generic style transfer where it does it in something that everybody knows, you can bring in your own images. It could be your brand image. It could be anything else. Basically, here again, I took a stock photo of a penguin. I took a stock vector art of whatever, a horsey, both of them from Pixabay. And then I just told it, draw the first image in the style of the second, or should have been there, make it a vertical image. And you can see that it faithfully applies, like it keeps the pose and the penguin intact while applying that style. And already here, you can imagine use cases for brands, applying their brand colors and brand styles to an image or the visuals they want to create. So it suddenly becomes more practical and grounded rather than a fun game to play with friends, right? And you can also do this with multiple. So you can say, take this style and this style, blend them, and then apply them to this image. So there's basically no limit to how you can toy around with this. To me, also a very cool creative use case. But beyond the visuals, you also have something like marriage of text and visuals, which is, again, something that prior image models have struggled with. They've gotten better at creating somewhat long text, but this is the first one that can do really long, like page-long texts, almost without errors, and apply them to different concepts. So here is another example. I basically said, I took a Nike ad, Define Your Greatness, and I say, I'm selling a wooden bucket called Wookit. It's not the most creative product, but that's what it is. That is really light and sturdy. Draw a horizontal banner or ad for it based on the attached image. And you can see it says, it keeps Find Your Greatness. And now I can have an interactive process where I say, well, instead of Find Your Greatness, it should say Dip into Eternity, which is another BS catchline game. Is that fine? Dip into eternity. That's what you wanted. Then I go, cool, thanks. Here is a picture, again, a Pixabay image of a woman. Now make an ad where this woman holds the bucket. And then they do this, right? So you can, again, iterate and blend concepts almost instantaneously. This is something that I personally would never be able to do on my own. I would need a creative person with a visual eye to do this, and the iteration speed would be significantly slower. There is another, there is something called the infographic creation. So again, I said, draw a vertical infographic about the benefits of eating marshmallows right before lunch. And disclaimer, please do not do that. It's probably not a good idea. But the model understood my request, broadly speaking, and it was able to create this infographic. Make some arguments, which of course BS arguments, but because that's what I requested, it had the context from its world knowledge and the context from its visual understanding to create this infographic all on its own based on essentially nothing than these two lines, right? And finally, perhaps the most impressive to me use case is being able to go from absolutely nothing to ideation to finished product on its own. So I uploaded this image of a backpack, again, a stock image, and I said, come up with a clever idea for a 4-panel cartoon ad featuring this product, then draw it. It should tell a complete story and showcase how our product helps people solve a problem. Feel free to use some text and short speech bubbles if applicable. Make it a horizontal image. So you can see I've given it very, very little. I didn't even say that this is a backpack and this is the problem it solves. I didn't tell it what story to tell. I didn't tell you what the pain points are. And this is what the model came up with all on its own. It's a 4-panel cartoon. It's a person struggling to carry stuff. It's it maps, as you can see, visually, the product, it transfers it into a cartoon extremely faithfully. It keeps the logo, it keeps the little frog monster attached to it, the colors. It gives us a tagline, and it gives us a person, happily carrying. So it tells the complete story. So we went from models that you needed to kind of hold by the hand and bridge the gap between like a chat model like ChatGPT and an image model and put things together, to a model that has enough world knowledge that it can come up with a concept. It can understand what is the product. It can actually first look at the image, analyze that image, and say, well, this is a backpack. What pain points do backpacks solve? Well, it's carrying stuff, right? It then comes up with its own layout for this 4-panel comic, and then it executes it, as you can see, perfectly with a consistent character, consistent style. Obviously, it's not the most inspiring and catchy 4-panel cartoon. Surely you can make more sexy arguments about your product, but the mere fact that a model without handholding can do this, to me, it's a big paradigm shift from what we're used to up until now. And I think that will lead very shortly into a bigger discussion. What does this mean? Because of course, many people are involved in the creation of something like this. And you can celebrate it if you are the one who is benefiting from it, but you might also be threatened by it if you are the person whose job is on the chopping block potentially. I wouldn't say in the near future or like in the short-term future, we will just do away with all kinds of design work, because clearly these kind of things will need a lot of work still. This is not a production-ready cartoon. Somebody would need to still iron out the kinks. We would need to rework it, make it production-ready, and so on. All right, let's see if we succeeded in, not sure actually if we have. Let's see, maybe if I need to refresh, something will appear. There we go, let's see. Futuristic lawyer. So obviously we gave it like this screenshot of you and I talking. It kept a representation of us. I wouldn't say this is a fantastic thumbnail, but again, we gave it like a simple screenshot, told it what to write, and it stuck to it. We didn't give it anything about brand guidelines and how it should look, and it kept faithful representation of the images behind us, sort of like, right, and interpreted it this way. So
it's not terrible at all.
No, well, no, I mean, you would clearly want to work further on it, right? It's not like you're not going to just throw this into YouTube. It needs to be a different, first of all, it did a square image. We would probably want it a horizontal image and a 16:9, but it spells things correctly. It understood what we wanted. It stuck to, the visuals we gave it. And if I probably told it to be more creative and say, hey, you don't have to copy the people exactly as they are, just use the general idea of them, you would have now seen that it was going to be able to do that, right? And if I insisted on sticking close to the people, what I found works is if you give it maybe 5 or 6 images of a person, of yourself, you can get even closer to your own face, right? You can say like, here is Tobias, and here are the 7 images of him. Make the person in the image look like him, and you would have a better chance of getting very close to what you need. So
and it does look like me. Like
yeah,
the
it's
same shirt,
a vague,
headphones.
vague interpretation of you, right?
Right, and I can clearly see that it's not me, which is a bit scary.
Yeah.
Because
It's
it
like
catches some of my characteristics, but it's still
right,
not me, right?
right. It's like Uncanny Valley a little bit, right? It's like
It is.
watching a D-list movie actor playing you in some straight to DVD movie. You're like,
Right.
what is this? That's not me. Who paid this guy? Yeah, but
And
in a sense, so I think these use cases are both cool to look at, because like, wow, it goes from, a line of instructions to a complete realized product. But also it is unnerving, because like, what does it mean that we are now here where one model can understand what you mean and has the world knowledge to do something with it? I don't know if you want to try another use case or if you want to jump into a broader discussion. It's your call.
I'm curious if ChatGPT's model can generate pictures of real people. I know Grok
It it
XAI's model is really good at
it
that.
can, and the best way to show it is actually to go to Sora. So if you don't know, Sora is originally OpenAI's video model for creating videos. But when they launched this native image generation in ChatGPT, they expanded Sora to become a platform for OpenAI's creative AI generation, which means images and video. And now it is also powered by the same GPT 4.0 native image generation that we see in ChatGPT. So if I go here and say the same, create a thumbnail idea or a podcast called Futuristic Lawyer. And then let me see, I'll paste this image. And then here I can actually select the aspect ratio. It doesn't have that many to choose from, but it has 3:2. So let's go with that. It can actually create two versions. Make it flashy, whatever. Then I'll just click remix, and it can create that here. And while it's doing that, I can walk you through a bunch of stuff. This is what you're seeing here is what everybody else is currently generating. And it's very, very good. You have Donald Trump right there. There's your answer. Yes, it can create real people, and it can, but of course, they also turned it into a video afterwards, but it can do kind of uncensored stuff like this. If I limit it to just images, so we can see, I know people have been creating lots of stuff with like, real actors, you can see right here Beavis and Butthead of what I assume as is Elon Musk and Trump, and of course it doesn't do, like, I would say, not safe for work stuff. It probably will be banning that, so you can't make like nude things or like gory stuff, but it can do almost everything else you can imagine. Yeah, I've seen people put Keanu Reeves in different situations, and political, like lots of like world leaders doing crazy stuff together and smoking up and whatever. So the answer is right now, it's quite uncensored when it comes to political stuff. It might be that they will roll it back a bit after
Barbie
going a bit.
Mobile Meth Lab. Sorry to
This is
interrupt.
amazing, right? Barbie
That's
Mobile
wild.
Meth Lab. It's fun to cook with Barbie. Yeah. And again, we can actually click on this image and we can see, look at how little the person gave the model. It's a photo of a 1970s full page ad for a pink toy, Barbie, blah, 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 realistic with a sales text. So the person didn't come up with what this ad should say. The model did, right? The model wrote all of this. This text came from the model, not from the person, from the brain of this AI, right? Barbie has her own mobile meth lab, just like the one on TV series, Push Panel. All of this is written by the AI model and incorporated into this ad. So scary stuff, right?
And it really nails text. That
It's
was one of
crazy.
the
It's crazy.
problems with previous text-to-image models, that they couldn't really
Absolutely.
work with text. This is
Absolutely.
perfect with
Exactly. The
text.
big breakthrough was DALL-E 3, which was actually the first OpenAI, or this third, but the first OpenAI model that could do text. And many other image models followed, including Midjourney, but they could handle, I would say, in my tests, I've done actually tests on my newsletter about this. The best ones at the time could maybe handle 10 to 15 words of text before things just derailed into gibberish, which was good, if you wanted to do like a banner, but nothing that comes even close to this level of nuance, full page ads and pages of text. And now let's see, it seems to have come up with, let's see if we got it. Let me see if I got there we go.
Okay,
Futuristic
okay.
lawyers. Make it flashy, okay. And then there is a second
Flashy it
one.
is.
And
I'm
then
not sure I'm going to use this,
no,
but
no, I'm not sure it's on brand, but it's
there's
futuristic
something
lawyer.
there. It would blend right into so many other YouTube thumbnails.
Exactly. And again, I asked it for a thumbnail, and I would imagine that when it hears thumbnail, it says, "Oh, what works on YouTube," right? So if you want to ground it a little bit and ask it to tone it down, you can also do that. Or you could feed it, in your case, you would be able to upload images of your prior podcast thumbnails and say, do this, but in that style, like I showed you in the beginning here, right? And probably it would get a lot closer to your visual identity and brand identity.
Wow, there are
So
really infinite possibilities with
yeah,
this
and,
stuff, huh?
and and that's why I'm sure that I might not even be doing this model justice with my tests, because surely somebody who is more involved could be like, Daniel, you're showing him, infographics, check this out, right? Because you can probably extrapolate a lot of interesting use cases for this. So
And are these images watermarked in any way?
I do not believe they are. I know that OpenAI have previously worked on some watermarking technology. I don't want to speak like with 100% certainty because I haven't done any review, but I know they struggled before to identify text. You've seen probably a lot of these AI text detectors. And the general consensus among people who actually understand how they work is do not use them. They are prone to false positives. They are easily tricked if you're after tricking them because they look for certain patterns and certain like predictable token outputs, but you can force a model to scramble those. So I guess we're probably in the same ball game now with the images. I know it was, I believe, called Synth ID. Synth ID is something, the Google DeepMind identify edge generated content with synth IDs. That's something they're working on. I don't think this is rolled out. Plus, when it will be eventually rolled out by Google, it will probably apply to stuff generated with Google's models. In this case, we're looking at an OpenAI model, right? So my guess is no, there isn't a watermark. So we are in the world where, yes, you can make realistic deep fakes and representations of people potentially saying or doing stuff that they weren't doing. And that is another big kind of downside of all of this insanity, right? The good use cases are weighed out by potentially bad use cases as well.
It's like the longer I stare at myself in that thumbnail, the more creeped out
You're,
I'm
yeah,
getting.
you're getting hypnotized by your own virtual version, right?
It's
Yeah,
it's so realistic and yet so uncanny,
it is. It is.
unhuman, kind of.
Yeah. And I mean, I would even argue that I've seen, obviously we can see a lot more realistic because this looks like it's been copy pasted into it, which is also how a lot of YouTube thumbnails look, right? They have these crazy faces going, or copy pasted into a visual. But like when you look at stuff that people have made here, a lot of it, like some of it is, I mean, this could be like a genuine, like, crappy camera photo of a person, right?
Mm.
I mean,
Close
some of it is
to,
like
at least.
this could be
Yeah,
like
this one could easily
at
be a
first
real
glance, like, oh,
photography.
cool, yeah, this is me in the 80s, with my friend playing this thing or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
and yet if we look very close at that image, we can see that it looks a bit strange
sure,
somehow. I think it's
sure.
hard to put into words, but there's just something about it.
I agree. I agree. A lot of these, um, I would say Mid-Journey is getting to a place where sometimes even when you know it's AI image and you start looking for spots, it becomes really hard to find. But all of them, they usually find like a vibe check at first glance. But when you start looking closer, you start spotting things. Back in the day, the dead giveaways were fingers because image models could not do fingers, and you would have people with 7 fingers. They still do that sometimes, but much more rarely. So it doesn't happen quite as often. But there's usually something. There is like an AI model might place an item on top of another item which would never be placed on top of each other. Like, why is
Mm,
why is the person's hat on top of a vase in the back image? Like, why would you ever put a hat on top of a vase? These kind of things. So, and of course, sometimes it's just like you said, it's maybe just the feeling of it, like something doesn't look right. Like, they wouldn't
mm,
smile like that. They wouldn't position themselves like that if they were in the game. It's too
right.
polished. Something's off. You don't know. You don't always know how to put words on it, but you sometimes know. But at the same time, we're not far from, not knowing, I would say. How many iterations of image models, and especially ones that are married with world knowledge, like GPT-4o now is, how many of those do we need before suddenly you just never know if that it's an
Mm.
AI image? I don't think it's something we should rule out. Maybe some people with a keen eye will say, I'll always be able to say, but never say never, right?
Even if you blind test people today and you take some very
Yeah,
realistic AI photos, it's
absolutely.
impossible for anyone to see, I would argue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if you're not prepared. If you're told you are doing like a test of what's AI, not AI, you will be tuned for it and you might. But if you're just shown a bunch of images, I mean,
It
you
could
already
fool
have like
anyone.
an older generation like falling for all sorts of scams and crazy things. And now you have something that can create a non-existent person in a non-existent place. And yeah. What does that mean?
Now that we are at it, is it possible for you to showcase Sora's video capabilities?
Yeah, sure. So some of the I think Sora in particular is not the best model for or sorry, for video generation. I would say right now that goes to Google VO2. They are really, really good. But I mean, you can see that this is actually Sora animating an image. You can see they took an image that which I assume Sora GPT-4o made, and then it created a storyboard in a cozy studio setting with a soft green backdrop, a cute baby monkey sits up close, blah, blah, blah. And then it told it to animate it. And then it did an okay-ish job here, actually, right? Except for it jumped from the first image and it interpreted it and put it in a different environment rather than just directly animated. But this, everything that's moving on the screen right now, that is Sora image generation. But we can do one, let's say, a person giving a TED talk about a podcast called Futuristic Law. And let's switch to video. And let's say a 480p, let's say just 5 seconds, so it doesn't take as long to generate. And then just say, let's go. Let's see what it comes up with. Over time, the queue here will show us.
Okay.
But everything here, you can, and I think what you're showing or what you're seeing on the front page of Sora, that is surfaced by likes and otherwise popular images. So you are seeing kind of cherry-picked good examples. So you don't see the examples where this monkey maybe suddenly grows a third arm and flies away and some crazy stuff happens. So those cases still do happen, especially with the video model. It doesn't necessarily maintain consistency nearly as good. And I mean, this is a cool concept, right? The wolf in sheep's clothing, and like, except for with a human arm for some reason. So that alone is like,
Okay.
a weird take. Okay, so
And
let's
this
see.
is something like a human being could probably never have made.
No,
There
no,
is something unique about AI, right?
yeah, and if you use it that way, so I think there are some niches and there are some places where I think AI can maybe extend people's creativities. I can see artists who do see themselves as traditional artists, and I know some of them who experiment with AI and they love it, and they're like, listen, I don't mind this. In fact, I train AI on my style so that it can mimic my stuff and fuse its knowledge and interpretation of the world through mine. And that in itself is art because, you know, we're a fusion of machine and human in some sense. So let's see what it came up with here. Futuristic love year. So you can see that the difference between this and the native image generation is that native image generation is one model which is consistent, which is good at text, and the Sora is its own video model, and it still struggles with text. As you can see, it can't even do two words without making a mistake. But at the same time, you know, TED Talk, it is a person on stage. It has some world knowledge. There are some people who seem believable. I mean, I don't know why he's walking in place like he's, you know, doing the Running Man and why the camera swings like that. But yeah, so this would be an example of not the best video model. But again, it took us, what, 15, 20 seconds to generate this behind the scenes based on a very simple prompt and no reference image.
And
So,
it's striking that the TED symbol looks just perfect.
and that's not surprising to me because, as you know, these models, they are all of them, from text to video to images, they are trained by feeding them just an insane amount of that type of input, whether in this case it's videos, or in the case of image models, images, and in the case of text models, right? And things like a TED logo or a Nike logo or anything brand related, or Coca-Cola, what have you, Apple, they are so prevalent in these kind of training tests, right? Because, I mean, how many TED videos are there? Very many, right? So it will be able to mimic stuff like that. But if you give it a brand logo that nobody's ever seen before and say, hey, do this, it might fail because it only has one reference image to go on, right? So,
And this is where we could discuss IP violations
exactly,
and,
exactly,
and trademark infringements, because
exactly.
no matter what the law says, if we forget about the law, just the brand in itself,
Yeah,
the brand is becoming degenerated if
of course,
everyone can just generate it perfectly. And
of course.
the Studio Ghibli memes is a perfect example of
Yeah,
that. Now when people see a Studio Ghibli image, they'll instantly think about ChatGPT
right.
instead of the creators, and that's problematic, right?
No, no, absolutely, absolutely. And I know that the man behind Studio Ghibli, I forget his name. I probably should have, but I mean, he went on record to say that this is like painful to watch. And I absolutely, on a personal, as like human level, understand that visceral reaction. I understand that. What does it mean that, you've painted for maybe 20 years to create something that unique? It has a human maybe tragedy and story behind it. And then you have a bunch of just people making their family photos in that style at the drop of a hat. What does it mean? And that these are discussions we need to have. Legal, like you said, legal aspect is part of it. Are we infringing on copyright? Can they be sued? Can they, but also like, yeah, what does it mean for, I mean, the optimist in me would be like, okay, but maybe we get to a stage where we just stop looking at, styles as being these copyrightable things, but more like look at the evolution of humanity as a whole and coexisting with machines and co-creating something new. That could be the optimistic path, but are we there yet? No, I know that things look quite divided in the artist community on this. I've seen both range of people. I've seen people who are vehemently anti-AI and are like, just don't show me this sloppy crap, and I don't want to even look at it, and it's destroying everything I believe about humanity. And I've seen people who are extremely positive, who are like, I am an artist. I'm not threatened by it. I love to incorporate this into my flow. This makes my job easier. It makes me more inspired. It gave me a new lease on life. So I've seen kind of both ends of that spectrum. But it's hard for me to make a value judgment because I think it is such a personal thing still. We're still at the early years of all of this.
Right. Do you have anything else you want to demonstrate, or should we get on to
No, I
discuss
think,
this just a
I
bit
think the
more?
showcase part we can kind of close. I think you kind of get the idea of it now. So I don't know if I should just stop. I'm already not sharing, I assume, or I don't know.
Yeah, you're still sharing.
Okay, so I probably should be able to. Question is, how should I stop sharing? I can see the share button, but I cannot see the not share button.
Let me
Perhaps
see what I can
that's some. Maybe
do.
you can do that as a host from your side and just like disconnect my screen.
Technology, right?
You would think there would be some kind of AI tool that could solve this for us. I don't know.
Yeah, we're still not at HEI yet. There
No,
we
no.
go.
Aha, there we go. Perfect. Cool.
Cool.
But yeah, no, we can definitely have that chat now because I think this creates good fodder for this kind of discussion because
Hmm.
you can probably list a dozen of jobs that can be eliminated if these tools become mainstream. Just the ones that we touched upon, and that's not touching upon anything like coding, business creation, and value creation, and so on. So yeah,
And it's great. Like I can see the potential. I can see all the creative opportunities, and it's so impressive. At the same time, it's a bit uncanny, as you said, and it's a bit dystopian. If we
it
look
is.
at all these Sora videos and images, for instance, we just scroll down that feed. If we do that for a couple of minutes, it feels like the whole world is falling apart.
Yeah, yeah,
So many inputs like into our minds, so much going on. It's very chaotic.
yeah,
Where do you think this is going? Like, let's say, yeah, in the future, I don't know how long it could be, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. How do you think this can develop? Can we expect that the image and video models will just become better and better and better? Or do you have anything in mind where this could be like change and develop even further?
yeah. So on the first question on whether they will get better, I think the answer is I would be pretty confident to say that we have not seen the end of progress here. So in terms of the models actually getting better, and we at some point get into a place where maybe I can make me a movie with Tom Cruise about aliens fighting marshmallows, and it creates a full movie for you, within, a 30-minute movie for you. We might actually get to a place that is going to be possible. I mean, maybe that's a pipe dream, but will individual image models and video models get increasingly better over the next year or so? Absolutely. We've only seen progress. I mean, you don't have to go back that far. You only need to go back maybe 1 or 2 years where AI video looked like absolute nightmare fuel. We were talking about these crazy, weird monster shapes. Now we have, especially if you looked at Google Veo 2 and not Sora, which I showed you, it can make videos that look really consistent, and you can already be fooled by the fact that this is not an AI video. So, and that's, only been out for a couple of months. So these models will get better and they will be able to do more and more competent things. But the broader question, and that is, so what? What does that mean for society, and are we okay with it, and so on? That's a much more difficult question to answer, I think. Um, I am trying to be, or I think I by nature am kind of a, I don't know if I would call myself a cautious optimist or maybe a realistic optimist. Like I can see both paths. I can see the dystopian path, and nothing has any meaning. The nihilistic path. I'm like, well, if everybody can create Studio Ghibli, what's the point of art anymore at all, right? Like, why do we even want to do anything anymore? Like, anybody can press a button, uh, and and livelihoods are destroyed, and art has no meaning. On the other hand, the optimist in me is like, but what about actually having some kind of a pushback where at some point some of the people start rising to the top again because they married this AI slop or the baseline with something that only they could do, and they lifted that power of these AI models to a new level. And suddenly it's like, well, yes, they are an artist who uses AI, but doing it in a uniquely creative way that no other person who's just going to do 10 million Studio Ghibli images can replicate. So, and I think we're going to crave that because just like you said, you scroll through that feed and after a while you're like, it's all the same. It's like, if I alone can make 1,000 images of Studio Ghibli in a second, how many millions of them are there? Because people are just doing the same stuff. Like, and at some point it's not going to be enough because once the dopamine wears off, you're like, okay, but what's the meaning in all of this? And then we're going to seek those people who are like, well, here is something that actually tells a story that matters, but uses these new AI tools in a way that we've never been able to imagine. I've actually seen a short film that was made entirely. Again, when I say entirely by AI, it means that the videos themselves are generated by AI, but the ideation and the concept and lots of painstaking post-editing work has been done by a person. And it was about kind of a story about dementia and the lady seeing her husband. And it was like, it had a human story, but it was told and created using a video tool. And it wasn't even a strong video tool. It was like middle of last year. So we are in a better place. And I was like, well, I'm inspired because now this person, yes, you can dismiss them and be like, yeah, they just used an off-the-shelf AI tool. But I'm like, yes, but they told a story that you didn't tell because you are making Studio Ghibli images that, look like Harry Potter and they fly into the sky. But this person told an actual full story of tragedy and loss and so on. So again, the optimist in me would like to say, hopefully the dystopian scenarios are not going to come to pass. And instead, this craving for human connection is going to lift us to a place where, yes, AI is there, but it is complementing these stories and the ability. And I mean, a solo creator can now actually tell a story they might have never been able to tell. That could be the optimistic version of it, right? I don't have a Hollywood studio behind me. I don't know how to even get a connection to get that story, but maybe I have a burning story to tell. And now I can sit down and make it. I can make it. It might take me a couple of months to put all of this together, but now I can actually do it purely on my own and put that out into the world and be like, hey, this is a story of my life or my family or whatever it might be. And it would never have been possible without an AI tool. So yeah, that's the long-winded way of saying I would like to think we're better than this as humanity, and we are going to get to a positive plateau with these tools. Yeah.
We can say that the bull case for these tools is that everyone can now create something that they were not able to create before. It has
Yeah.
given us new ways of expressing ourselves creatively.
Exactly.
On the other hand, I'm afraid, just to be frank, that we're going to be drowned in bullshit.
I mean, we already are.
We already are.
I think we already are. I mean, AI slop, as it's become the term, is the new spam, right? Like we've had, like when it comes to text content, we've had that even before AI. We had like these content farms where people did absolute bare minimum of like passable content just to, for SEO purposes or whatever it might be, just like thousands of articles of just crap that nobody actually wanted to read. And now that is reduced to a click of I don't know, a finger. I can flood, personally, me, just Daniel, today, I can flood thousands of articles into the internet with no marginal cost at all, right? It can be out there tomorrow. Uh, but so I think you're absolutely right. I do think it will happen, and it's already happening. We are seeing like millions of Studio Ghibli images or Harry Potter reinvented as a unicorn images or whatever it might be, and there will be out there. But I would like to think that just the sheer volume of that happening might create a loop where the motivation mechanism of creating that is gonna disappear, because the first Studio Ghibli image, oh, that's really cool. The 1,000th Studio Ghibli image is like, haha, we're still doing this. The millionth Ghibli image is like, stop showing me this crap. I'm tired of it. So we will exhaust the bottom of the barrel, kind of like the low effort stuff, relatively soon. It's going to get saturated. Again, that's the optimist in me. It's going to get saturated where people are being like, listen, I don't care about Studio Ghibli anymore. Just don't show me this. But then suddenly something will emerge from that where a person creates something actually unique, and we're going to start creating that. But maybe by saying what I just said, it echoes back to your point, because you said yes, but now that people are saying Studio Ghibli is crap, don't show me that. That's sad for the original Studio Ghibli that actually took freaking effort to get to, and now their brand value, as you called it, is demolished by this slop. And who's to blame, and how do we get out of this? And again, no good answer. I'm excited by the ability to do stuff with tools, and I also have to, whether I'm happy about it or whether I'm begrudgingly accepting it, I have to accept that looking at the way things are now, we're not going to go back to a pre-AI world. Whether some people might hate it, some people might love it, some people might be between, but no matter what any of us thinks, what you and I think, we're not shutting this book down. It's out there. And then my mindset is like, okay, how do we make the best of it? How can I personally not abuse it in a way that devalues somebody else's brand? How do I do it in a way that doesn't put crap out there, that slop out there, that affects people in that negative way? How can I be a better person using these tools? And I think right now it's an individual decision, but maybe, and that's maybe something you can talk to, maybe there are some mechanisms through which we can make it an expectation or a baseline legal requirement that we can lift us to that level, up from this bottom of the barrel, lowest common denominator, to a higher plane. What do you think? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I would like to address that briefly. I think the only way to regulate or do something about this effectively would be to put requirements on the social media platforms like Facebook,
To police
TikTok,
it, to
Instagram.
monitor.
Exactly. To some extent, we have Digital Services Act, which puts some requirements on how social media platforms and platforms in general are supposed to handle content. I'm not sure to what extent we can use the Digital Services Act to in this context. What I will say is that the platforms are the only one who can do anything about this issue. Like lawmakers in Brazil or in Washington cannot really do anything about it. It's out of our hands.
Yeah.
So we have to put requirements on the big technology companies.
Yeah.
Further, this will mainly be the European Union's job. I don't see the Trump administration being very harsh on their big technology sector at
They're
all.
very big on deregulation and going the opposite direction.
Exactly. Putting any guardrails in place and like potentially, which could potentially have a negative effect on the economy on a big level. I'm just not seeing it happening.
No.
So the EU will have to step up and do something about it. And and it's the same thing with age verification.
Right.
Like in Australia, they have just passed a law which they put the responsibility on the social media platforms to make sure the children under 16 are not using their services. Right. I think personally it would be great if the EU did the same thing. Yeah. When I see like a small girl, like 9 years old, 10 years old, with a huge smartphone, to me, this is like the same as seeing a small girl with a cigarette. There's just something wrong about the site. On the other hand, I can understand it from the parents' perspective because kids are challenging from time to time, and it's probably good to like give them an iPad and make them watch something, and that's cool. But there's no reason at all that like 13-year-old girls should be on Instagram.
No.
Makes no sense. There's nothing there for them.
I'm actually at that stage myself as a parent, like because my daughter is 8, my son's, well, and then my son is almost 10. And we are actually like starting to think about this. We've been pretty good at saying, no to a lot of this stuff, and we know that the social media, for example, we already communicated to them why we need to wait and so on. So at least that is not in the picture, but we do see the social pressures beginning to emerge on this. Yeah, my concern with the things about deregulation, or not deregulation, but rather regulation of social media is like, isn't it a bit like whack-a-mole? Because, okay, you regulate Facebook, you regulate Instagram, you regulate all the big ones. Let's say we shut them down completely and like they just you cannot put any AI stuff in there. I mean, if there is demand for it, won't it surface elsewhere? Won't they create new platforms, new forums, whether it's going to be variations of Reddit or whatever? You can't regulate the entire internet. They create a new platform that's called, AI socials, whatever it might be called. Is it realistic to actually think that regulation can fully stop this? Probably it can make it discourage a lot of people and a lot of the big ones. And maybe your answer is going after the big ones. That's enough because we can reduce it to 20% instead of 100%. What's your feeling?
I agree with you there. My main concern is that especially young people in the Western world are spending so much time on the same social media platforms, right. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook to a smaller extent, Snapchat for sure, other platforms I'm not even aware of by now probably. But there's a little group of platforms that kids are spending a lot of time on.
Right.
These platforms, they show them all this content, and that's especially the video scroll, which concerns me. It's like passive consumptions.
Yeah.
These young people are just scrolling and they're seeing all kinds of weird and disturbing stuff. Yeah. And some of this stuff you showed me today, generated by ChatGPT's image generator, it is slightly disturbing. I'm wondering what will happen when like a 12-year-old kid is watching this stuff like for many hours every day. I think it will impact their brains in ways we still don't fully comprehend. One more point I would like to make. So we should not give any responsibility on the parents or the users or the children when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to AI-generated content or misinformation. It should only be the social platforms we regulate. So we should tell TikTok or Facebook that they should have rules in place about how they show AI-generated content. For one thing, which I think is key, is that AI-generated content should probably be marked so we can see that it is AI-generated content. Otherwise, we'll end up not knowing what is true and what is false. And there's a really good quote by an Israeli historian called Yuval Noah Harari about this. He says that the truth is very expensive to manufacture and lies are very, very cheap to manufacture. And the same goes with AI. Like if you want to create a beautiful piece of work, you have to spend a lot of time on finessing all the details, and it will be very costly and it will be very time consuming. AI generated slop you can generate instantly and infinitely. So how can we avoid that services that we depend on? To some extent, we depend on Facebook. There are many features like community features and so on that are now like we're invited to events also, and who is having birthdays, and like we've become very married to Facebook in many European countries. So we have to put some pressure on them to make sure that their platform is usable for one thing, and also nice to use. So we're not just drowned in AI generated stuff. We have to put up some minimum standards and tell them what to do. Absolutely. That's how I think regulators should deal with this stuff.
I think actually we're not too far from each other on this. Like I think I personally would feel no kind of pushback at all to something like, let's say that there is a watermark or something that tells us that this is AI and that's a requirement. I mean, I don't know how enforceable that is or technologically, feasible that is, but from a perspective of like, let's make a clear, like a separation between those two. So you like now you are interacting with an AI world and this is not real, like in a computer game, and now you're interacting with reality, so anything that helps us make that discernment is probably going to be helpful, especially in situations like you just mentioned with kids, my kids as well. I want to be able to help them distinguish between, are they looking at AI slop right now, or are they looking at something that someone created? And sometimes the distance is not that big because there is also a lot of human slop, like the lazy videos, but still, you need to be able to surface things on their own merits. But you're probably right in terms of trying to put that pressure on, and through that, these platforms can also have responsibility to them, because I feel like, no, from a government side, we should not punish parents and kids and so on and regulate them. But at the same time, as a parent, I also would feel that my fellow parents feel the responsibility to explain to the kids, like, hey, AI exists, it's out there, here's how you navigate. Just like as before AI, we would have to say, yes, you can go on Google and type stuff, but just because you get to a blog and a conspiracy blog doesn't mean that's what's written on it is true. You had to teach them this information hygiene, how to tell sources apart, how to tell reality apart from, I mean, Photoshop existed to some extent. Is this Photoshopped? Is it not? Could it have been Photoshopped? It's just, of course, the volume and the scale is very different now. But the fundamental responsibilities we have as individuals in society, I don't think it's that affected by it. It's just, it is more tricky now, but we still all have responsibility to teach ourselves and our kids and whoever how to engage with, well, this new reality. Because again, the genie is not going back in the bottle. How do we make sure that this genie is something we can live with and know how to approach, right? At least that's my
I
take on it.
completely agree.
Yeah,
Education and awareness campaigns are key. And now we're talking about children, but it could also be grown-ups.
sure.
There are like adults who are spending hours every day on X is especially, terrible place to spend too many hours a day. You can really become crazy.
Oh, just echo
Um,
chambers in general are a problem wherever they are, whether
echo
they're on X.
chambers.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah,
I'm not sure how it works. I really wish that there would be more studies into how this constant stream of misinformation and AI-generated misinformation really affects people's brains. There is something there. I'm not sure what it is, but people become completely brainwashed, even somewhat sensible people.
yeah, I agree. I've seen it happen as well, but I think a lot of it, unfortunately, is also human nature. It's just now technology has made it so easy to find, fellow people. Before, you would have to maybe go and meetups and see it and reinforce this mentality that you have, because we are, what I mean, I would like to think of myself as objective, but I'm sure I have my biases. Probably the same goes for you. And of course, the extent is different. Some people go all the way to conspiracy. Some people are just like, oh, I'm going to look away from the thing that's sort of saying something that I don't like, and I'm going to prefer more of this. We all gravitate to stuff that confirms what we already have, and or rather gravitate away from stuff that tells us something that maybe we need to confront, right? But yes, AI and social media especially has made it just so much more easier to navigate and find fellow like-minded people, even if it's about crazy things that are objectively not true, or whatever it might be. So it's kind of the easy way is to blame the technology and say we should ban it, but like the reality is a lot of it comes from ourselves. Like it's not ChatGPT by itself creating all the Studio Ghibli images. Somebody's feeding it, and it went viral because that's what people wanted to do. And most of them are not thinking about the consequences of, like, I think if you ask most of them what Studio Ghibli is, they probably don't even know what they're doing. They're just copy pasting
Hmm.
somebody else's prompt, right? So technology is an enabler, and in this case, a strong enabler. But there is also some work we need to do with ourselves as humans in the society in which we function. It's just maybe more urgent now with AI. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's something I think is very fascinating to think about. That when it comes to social media, for instance, we are not really in control of it.
No.
Our basic biological instincts takes over for many of us.
Mm.
Some people are able to control it better than others, but it's like smoking or drugs or whatever. It's a proper addiction, and it's very hard to control for all of us. It hacks into the human biology somehow,
Yeah,
which is a bit frightening that
it is.
we're not really in control of it. And now we have AI, which is, I see it as another layer on top of social media to some extent.
Yeah.
How do you see that? How do you see AI like as a technology revolution? Do you see it like social media or like the internet, or how do you perceive it?
I mean, I think it will have probably a much more wide-reaching impact, for better or worse, probably both of those, um, than either of those two. I think the main limitation I see now is not the AI itself and the capabilities of AI and how fast that's advancing. It's our ability to absorb it into our societal structure. So if it's where it's held back by bureaucracy or our inability to react fast enough. Like just because this model is there now, it doesn't mean there is an infrastructure into which you can incorporate it and start pumping out whatever production ready brand designs or whatever. Like, and I'm talking just about the image generation. I mean, already now in principle, there are things that don't even require any hardware changes. Like you can already, in principle, give every student everywhere a ChatGPT pre-trained on as a Socratic tutor or whatever. There's the one that doesn't give you answers, but like makes you look for answers. So you can incorporate it into education if you wanted to. But of course, there are policies, there are studies that probably need to happen. Is this actually a good thing or a bad thing on the whole? Is it a net positive or a net negative? Then it needs to be implemented. Then it needs to trickle down to the institutional level. So that's actually what's going to be holding these things back. But if we pick the right course and if we use the right tools for the right things, I think we're probably, and I already mentioned this to you before, but I'm kind of with Ethan Mollick on this. He always says that even if all AI progress stops today and we have no progress anymore ever in AI, the models that we already have will take maybe a decade or more to trickle in through society and actually be felt at a mass level. So I see that as very much being the case. I mean, if you look at the internet came out in early 90s, like when it was available, but it wasn't until maybe, I'm guessing like somewhere in the early 2000s where we actually, and in mass started switching to shopping online and doing these things because the infrastructure wasn't there. And even if the infrastructure was there from day one, you had to overcome the resistance or natural human resistance of, oh, I'm giving a credit card to this bot there, and how is the product gonna get here? Just this trust, all of this needs to come. So we're just simply too slow to catch up with what AI could hypothetically do. So to answer, yeah, definitely. I think it's gonna have profound impacts, and we also have a bit of a responsibility to make sure that they're better impacts rather than negative ones, right? Because
Right.
things you mentioned about social media, it's by design. It's the way it is. The dopamine thing, the TikTok, like the stuff that just keeps playing. It's designed by whoever puts it together for engagement so that we stay on the platform. And in the wrong hands, AI makes this kind of behavioral analysis and behavioral manufacturing even easier, right? Because now what if there is a hyper niched AI tool that knows me because it knows all the data that Facebook or Google knows. And based on that, it can create on the spot. It doesn't even need to find a video. It creates it with the AI model a video or an information piece that is just super captivating to me specifically to Daniel. And in the wrong hands, all of us are even more doom scrolling because now it's not just feed that our friends see, it's I'm seeing a personalized thing being created just for me, knowing that it's gonna appeal to me and make me want to keep clicking and watching, right? So yeah, it could be scary as well.
Mm.
And I think that's where the legal aspects come into it. How do we make sure that it doesn't, where companies who would want to do that for engagement are not allowed to do these things?
And that's something that really scares me because all the big AI companies are placed in the US, and
Mm,
now with new Trump administrations,
yeah,
all bets are off the table.
yeah,
We have no idea how things taking shape over the next couple of years,
no,
which scares me a lot
yeah,
because this is supposed to be regulated the space and it's going to be very challenging.
yeah, I
So
can see
the
that.
EU will really have to step up as I see it.
So what do like I've always wondered about this because I know that already now there is this big talking point about how depending on which side you're on, either EU is falling behind because they're idiots and they regulate and everything, and that's why they don't have good AI models, and the US has all the good models. And then you have people who are probably more balanced and who would say like, yes, but it's a good thing that they're regulated because these are the consequences. But are we then going to move into a like a polarized world where in EU things are, functioning more or less fine or as fine as we can make them with the tools that we have, and then US as the Wild West? Are we going to just polarize more into those? Or when you say EU has to step up, do you feel that EU might set the course and potentially affect positive change in US as well? Is that what you would envision?
Yes, that's what I think.
Okay.
There's something called the Brussels effect, which means that what one of the things it means is that EU's laws affect the laws in other countries,
Right.
especially when it comes to technology. And the reason for that is very simple to understand. These big US companies are very dependent on the European markets. There are a little more than 450 million consumers in the EU area, which are potential customers. And the big US tech companies cannot let this market go. It's vital for them to keep this market. But to play on the European turf, the companies need to follow European rules. And as they follow the European rules, they kind of bring these rules back home to the US.
Right. Yeah, I guess
So
GDPR would be
it's
a
very
good
simple.
example of that, right?
GDPR would be the example, right?
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
hope that the AI Act perhaps could do something similar. It actually looks like it already is.
Okay.
There are many states in the US which are implementing AI laws on a state level. On a federal level, it's a chaos right now. Nothing is going to be adopted probably in the foreseeable future.
Right.
But on a state level, things are different. Um, so already now we can see this happening. And I really hope, and I think it's extremely likely that the EU will become a positive influence for the US and also for the rest of the world. There's some part of the world which needs to step up and show the way. And it's not going to be the US right now, and it's for sure not going to be China. Although who knows?
Right.
China could, change in the
Right.
years to come. Who knows? But right now, I think the EU has a huge opportunity to show the way
Yeah.
for other countries because we're such a democratic, rule-based society.
Yeah.
We really prioritize individual human rights. We care a lot about that people are fairly treated, and these are good values. This is
Right.
what could be a great like groundwork for a functioning
Yeah.
society. A society which only favors the interests of the rich and
Yeah.
the elite is going to go to shit over time
No,
because
absolutely.
yeah, inequality can really ruin a society, right?
Yeah. It's actually interesting to hear that because, or that you are optimistic about the EU also affecting change in the US, because I've always seen it as, because if you compare also outside of AI world, I would say EU has better safety nets and regulations. Like I know that tomorrow if I'm unemployed, I'm not going to have to scramble to find out if I have an insurance. I know that in Denmark, I'm going to be taken care of. I know that if God forbid something happens to me and I'm bleeding out, I'm not going to have to think like, oh, is the ambulance that's picking me up, is it covered by my insurance or not? I know that I'm just going to be taken care of. But at the same time, the reason that I think that is because I know there are countries elsewhere, like in this case, the US, where it is kind of a little bit more individualistic. Like, are you covered? Did you invest in your own insurance? It's not gonna. So there is this, you know, tiered world where EU is making sure that there is a blank safety net that saves everybody, and in the US it's maybe a little bit more. I don't want to speak about the US as like complete like anarchy place because it clearly isn't, and there are regulations, but there is already like a felt difference to me uh, between these countries. So can we then, in light of that, say that well, AI will also push US in the right direction, or maybe it will, but it will be maybe only 20% as good as the EU regulations. So it's probably not going to be like a rosy picture where EU adopts this law and everybody thinks it's great, and now everybody has this law, and we're in this unicorn land. Probably not going to happen.
Probably not anytime soon, that's for sure. And
Yeah.
like right now, with to be honest with you, like we're living through dark times. We all know it because of what is going on in the United
Right.
and also many other things that are going on in the world, obviously.
Mm.
So yeah, right now it's hard to see, but I think longer term, in a few years, I'm optimistic that the things will change.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the better.
Okay.
But
Well,
we'll see.
that's a more optimistic tone that I expected you to strike on this. So that's good to hear. Because obviously I don't think about the trajectory as much. I'm very much in my own bubble. Like, is this cool for Daniel to try these tools, right? I usually don't think outside myself that much. But when I'm forced to, like we are in this situation, I'm like, yeah, I think we have some work to do. So it's
Yeah, we
good to hear
do. We
that
do.
it's not hopeless.
I think that I don't know. I'm just theorizing. I have no idea. My intuition is that over time, I think there will come a lot of changes in the United States as well. I don't think the current situation can last for very, very long. This cannot go on for 5 years, 10 years. It's too chaotic, and I
Yeah.
think more and more people are waking up to that. To be frank, like now we're at the end of our podcast, so I can be like a bit political and
Yeah.
say that, a second Trump term, what a freaking nightmare.
Yeah. I think AI
It's
or no AI, that
really
was going to be
horrible.
true.
Like, and we have to live through it again, and it's going to take up so much space in the news cycle for the next many months to come, and perhaps a few years to come. I don't
Yeah.
know, but over time, I expect some reforms to happen in the US as well, and things will probably get more stable. I hope so.
I think so. I think you're right. I think also there will be a upward pressure from like more and more people who are either affected by it or who see the downsides, who will probably put some pressure on whether it's politicians or organizations to enact some kind of change. So let's hope you're right.
Wow, we got into like a very high level from
I think yeah, I think
very
we
ground level
started from
to.
like, hey, here's a funny image of a Lego person to solving the entire complexity of human existence. Like I don't know.
That's so true. That's so true. Yeah, but I had a lot of fun.
No, I did as well. That was great.
Yeah, we should do it again in like some time and see
Sure.
how the development has turned out.
Sure. I think I know you had a few draft questions that we never got into, and I'm happy to do like a podcast that's maybe focused a bit more on the tactical level, like what are the AI tools that people should try, kind of that kind of stuff as well. So if that can be tied into anything that you're interested in discussing, I'll be happy to do that.
Certainly. Okay.
So
Daniel, thank you very much for the presentation and for our
yeah,
discussion here. It was great.
thanks for having me, Tobias. It was great.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Futuristic Lawyer Podcast. Thank you very much for your time.